All right, welcome to the Health is Wealth podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Brady Salcido, and today I'm joined by my good buddy, Dr. Mike Vandershelden. How you doing today, bro?
I'm doing great, man. Good to be here.
Yeah, man, stoked to have you. Fun fact, me and Dr. Mike went to school together, so kind of getting a little reunion pre-show here. All right, so first question I have for you. I know a little bit about you, but our audience doesn't, so tell us a little bit more about who you are and how you got into intermittent fasting.
Yeah, well, as you did, we went to chiropractic school, and I'm a chiropractor, and I'm in a pretty high volume practice, and I've always been interested in exercise, nutrition. I've always wanted that competitive edge, and and just do whatever I can in my power to be just functioning as optimal as possible. And I feel like what to eat, in terms of like your diet, I feel like that's pretty well established in the literature, fruits, vegetables, low refined carbohydrates, high quality proteins, no antibiotics, no hormones. So I feel like that's a pretty much a given going on there, but no one ever talks about how and when to eat. So we know what to eat, but we don't know how and when to eat. And so I wanted to look into that because, as we, what do we do? You go to any nutritionist out there, you go to any of that, and they're telling you to eat just multiple meals throughout the day. But sometimes with our crazy schedules, that's not only is it not convenient, but it's just hard to do. So I wanted to find out a way. And right when I was spiked this curiosity, maybe about a couple of years ago, there started to be a couple articles out there and a couple of research articles published in like Clinical Journal of Nutrition, just all these really good journals. And it just kind of spiked my curiosity right there. And, for me I want to be as high energy, high functioning as possible. And so I really wanted to look for a way to really optimize my daily lifestyle plan to function at my optimum potential.
Nice. Now, I think a lot of people think intermittent fasting's a diet, which is not. You kind of hit that around. It's much more protocol. Now, what exactly is intermittent fasting? Can you describe that a little bit more?
Yeah. Well, how's my audio? Are we good?
Oh yeah, you're good.
Okay, cool. So, just to kind of come back, because right now, we're gonna be airing this probably in like mid-February, but right now we're going through New Year's transition, and everyone makes a new diet, a new diet goal, everything. And honestly, diets suck. Like diets are ridiculous. First of all, someone's gonna be like, they'll usually go like, oh, I want to lose 20 pounds. So someone's gonna go dieting, and then once they fulfill their 20-pound goal, what do? They stop dieting. So they stop doing everything what they did to get there, and of course they gain it back. Because about 92% of people 5 years later gain not only to their original weight, but they actually gain more weight previously. So diets out there, even though they're a multi-billion-dollar industry, they freaking suck. So diet is just not the right answer. What we got to do is we got to make a lifestyle change. You got to do something daily to get as healthy as possible and stay healthy as possible. There's not like you don't want to have an end goal, and then because once you reach that end goal, people just stop what they did to get successful, and so then they just gain it back. And so basically, what you got to look at is intermittent fasting. You got to look at, kind of like how we do is like, if we eat paleo, we look back at how the hunter-gatherers, how our ancestors ate. We got to do the same thing with when did they eat. Well, right now, when you look at these hunter-gatherers, they didn't have food available around the clock. They didn't have a KFC, a McDonald's, everything, every single block, grocery stores everywhere lined up. So there wasn't this food available 24/7 around the clock. And so my big premise was we have to do what they did. And they cycled through periods of feast and famine. And their famine, was going multiple hours without eating. Not 2 hours. That didn't consider a famine. This was like, sometimes days, where they would go hunting and they wouldn't get anything. And so they would cycle through these periods. And what they realized is that, man, this cycling of food actually had a ton of biochemical benefits. And so intermittent fasting, what they really did is, in a couple years back, they were doing these studies and they found that continuous fasting, and you're talking like 3-4 days at a time, showed these really, really good benefits to people's physiology. In terms of, cholesterol levels, just really every single type of blood profile out there improved on this continuous fast. Now, who out there do you know is going to just say, okay, I'm not going to eat for 3 to 4 days? Obviously, that's not appealing to anybody. I'm not going to do that.
No way.
I get hungry. No way. Absolutely not. And so then they started coming out with studies saying, actually, if you fast intermittently, where you restrict your eating window to a couple hours out of the day, up to 8 hours, you can actually get the same benefits, if not better, in certain areas, especially with like insulin sensitivity and stuff. And so that's where I kind of wanted to shift gears to. And I thought this was really cool because really theoretically, intermittent fasting involves restricting your eating window. Most popular is where you restrict your eating window to about an 8-hour period every day. And so really it's just skipping one meal, whether it's breakfast or dinner, pretty much, So I personally would rather skip breakfast than skip dinner, personally, because I like to go to bed satiated. If I go to bed hungry, I'm not really happy, and good luck getting me to sleep. So that's kind of where it kind of stemmed from, and I don't know if you had a follow-up question with that, but
yeah, so the follow-up question would be, so what's the science behind it? What's the science behind getting into actually that fasting mode that's so beneficial for us?
Yeah, so what happens when we eat a meal? Your body does a couple things. First, it's going to spend a couple hours processing that meal, and what we're doing is we're giving our body available energy in the form of glycogen in our liver and muscle, stored blood sugar, and blood sugar. So when we're eating a meal, when we are using energy, we first go after our glycogen stores and our blood sugar. That's the first source of energy we ever do to tap into. Now, it takes our body to deplete its glycogen, to deplete all the blood sugar. It takes about 8 hours roughly, anywhere from like really 6 to 12 hours, let's say average 8 hours. So that means that if it takes 8 hours to utilize all your glycogen and blood sugar, then after that, and only after that's depleted, when we go after our fat as energy. So if you're eating every 2.5, 3 hours, constantly replenishing your glycogen stores, your blood sugar, you're never going to get to your fat stores ever. And so everything, and so you look at what all these nutritionists are saying, even we learn this in school, eat frequently every 2 hours to avoid this starvation mode theory. What you're doing is you're constantly replenishing your glycogen, you're constantly replenishing your blood sugar, so you're never going to be able to achieve that fat loss you wanted to, which is why all these diets fail, which is why we're getting more and more obese. It just does not work. And people are going through this info, they don't know where to go to get advice because everyone's saying different things. But really go back to what our ancestors did, cycles of periods of feast and famine, and you're going to be so much better off. And you're finally going to be able to go after those fat stores, which is actually a lot cleaner fuel. And that's the only way to do it.
Yeah, and you can actually utilize it. I mean, where's the research for 6 meals a day? I mean, I still haven't found it. I don't know if you have or not.
There is none. But the theory they had, though, again, was, they figured that a couple hours after not eating, their theory was your body hit a starvation mode, where basically your body puts its metabolism at hold so your body can spare every calorie, like it's like starving. Mm-hmm. Now, they actually did research on this, on the starvation mode. And it turns out what's interesting is that the starvation mode does exist. However, what people think it does, when they think it occurs after 2 to 3 hours after eating, it's more like 72 to 96 hours after eating. So you're talking not 2 to 3 hours, you're talking 3 to 4 days after eating is when you hit that starvation mode. And if you think about that, just as we were, think about our hunter-gatherers, they go on this hunting trip, right? And say that, these guys have not eaten for days at a time. But say they're trying to go on a hunting trip and they're not catching anything. And after about 3 days, your body actually will go into that starvation mode where your metabolism will tank because your body literally is training for survival. It needs to survive. But what's cool is that they also did research on metabolism. And short term, when you fast, short term, your metabolism actually goes up. So you actually increase your metabolism. And again, think about our ancestors. When they're going hunting, when they're not eating for a while, their metabolism is going up because they're actually have a spike in their healthy stress response for signal detection, for energy, for more concentration, so they can be more prosperous when they're hunting. So it increased the likelihood that they would actually catch the game they needed to eat. But again, if they did this for 3 to 4 days and they were still not catching anything, then your body would shunt down that metabolism, go to that starvation mode, because pretty soon you may starve to death. And so your body knows that, and so it's an intelligent response to actually shunt that metabolism to increase likelihood of survival. So that's basically kind of that whole theory there, but all those myths of eating, every 2.5 to 3 hours, completely just a myth, completely busted.
Yeah. Now, do you recommend a certain window? Because I know, especially Dave Asprey, he talks about there's different windows where it be 8, 12, 15, even 18-hour fasts. What do you kind of find is a good window?
A good start is, I just say, an 8 or a 16-hour fast minimum is the good way to start.
So an 8-hour feeding window.
8-hour eating window, 16-hour fast. Now, if you're female, they've actually shown research that they get good results with doing a 10-hour eating window. So doing a 14-hour fast. So a little bit less strenuous than us. But that's what they show. And again, this is when you're doing it daily. And that's why I like doing it daily. They have other intermittent fasting methods where you're doing every other day fast. You're doing 2 days out of the week fast. I'm personally not a big fan of that kind of stuff because I like to do things every day because it ingrains into my lifestyle. You know, when I don't like sporadic stuff going on.
Yeah.
If I keep patterns going on in my life, I'm more likely to keep continuing those patterns. I like consistency, and I think that people, and with my patients, they've found a lot more results when they do it in the daily form, just decreasing their eating window, than doing like a full fasting day, Mondays and Thursdays. It just makes everything sporadic. Doing the same thing every day increases their chances of success greatly.
It's kind of like when you go to the gym too. It's like you're going to see better results when you go twice a week. Or you're going to see better results when you do 5 to 7 times.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And it's easy, right? I mean, if you have morning routines, it's not very hard. It's hard to do a morning routine Monday and Thursday only, you know, because it's like, because you haven't done it in a couple days. And do I really have to do it now? But if you do it every day, it's just like, it's routine. And we respond better as a human population of doing routines on a daily basis than more sporadic. So I like doing that. And also, too, it simplifies your day. I mean, personally, I like to skip breakfast. And so that's one less meal I got to prep. And so it makes it a lot easier for people who are trying to lose weight. That's one less meal they're eating. And it's hard to eat that same amount in a shorter window. Even though you don't have restrictions on the food you need to eat during your eating window, it's hard to make up for that last meal in a shorter eating window. And so right there is easier because you don't necessarily need to eat less calories on this to lose weight. You still will lose weight and lose fat, but it just makes it easier if you do eat less calories because, again, it's hard to fit that one more meal into that smaller eating window.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I mean, I've been doing this for about 5-6 months now, and I'm already seeing tremendous results with it already. And I eat pretty healthy for the most part. You know, I'd probably say 90% of the time I eat very clean, more paleo, ketogenic style diet. And that's just what works for me. But as soon as I actually tuned it into the intermittent fasting protocol, I noticed huge results. So let's talk about some of those. One of the ones being weight loss, which you kind of touched on. And I think kind of the important thing with this that you kind of mentioned before is it's not so much that we're activating that you need to eat less calories or that, you know, something's changed in that regard, but it's almost like you're activating a different hormonal response from the body that's creating this fat loss. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, like with the fat loss again, so everyone would always say that, and this is kind of tying in growth hormone as well, but everyone would always say that, you're only releasing growth hormone when you're sleeping. But again, the reason why we did that is because insulin and growth hormone are indirectly related. So if we have insulin in our system being released, we're not releasing growth hormone. Now, obviously, when we're sleeping, we're not eating. So we're not having those insulin increases, which is why everyone always says we only release growth hormone when we're sleeping, because our insulin's down. Well, if we can add another 8 hours on top of that during our day of our insulin being down, that's more capable of growth hormone. But also, too, growth hormone's a big hormone for fat loss. So that's one of the ways where you're going to get this huge amount of fat loss. But also, too, if it takes, like I said, around, let's say average 8 hours to utilize the glycogen and blood sugar stores, that means that if it takes 8 hours after a meal to finally hit those fat stores, that means for that additional 8 hours we are in our fast, we're going to be burning massive amounts of fat because your body has nothing else to go to. And what's cool is that what it really is, that's called technically ketosis. Now, you're not really getting into clinical ketosis with intermittent fasting. And that's why they now have things on the market like exogenous ketones, ketone supplements you can take, because if you flood your body with ketones, your body's more likely to use those ketones for energy. So they have different things, but you do start to shift it slowly. And that shift in energy from being dependent on burning sugar for energy to burning fat is really efficient. Fat is kind of like biodiesel. It's a very clean form of energy. It gives you a lot less free radicals as a byproduct than carbohydrates, than sugar. And so you're just going to be so much more healthier. And also, too, you think when you're sick, does our appetite go up or down?
Yeah.
It goes down, absolutely. But that's not a mistake. It's because your body wants to actually start using its fat stores, using that cleaner fuel to actually get healthier and rejuvenate the system. But what do most people do? They force feed themselves. I remember back in the day, my mom used to give me like cinnamon and sugar toast, like forcing it on me. And it's like, that's the last thing you want to do, because your body actually doesn't want, your body doesn't make mistakes. It's very, very intelligent. And so, but if we actually just listen to it once in a while, we would actually be able to utilize those benefits. But when you're sick, again, your appetite goes down. So you shouldn't force feed yourself during that period, because your body actually is doing that for a reason. We weren't made just with an air like, oh, when you're sick, you're not going to be hungry, but you should eat. Like, that's just not how things work, but that's kind of it. And so your body now, if you're cycling through 16 hours of not eating, your body's going to go after massive amounts of fat for energy. And that's why, too, kind of a segue is if you work out in a fasted state, and that's what I do personally. Right when I'm about to break my fast and eat, I work out right before. Because if my body's already dependent on my fat as fuel, and I go and work out and increase my energy expenditure, so if I'm increasing the energy, well, my body's got to grab it from somewhere. And right now, I'm in a fat burning mode. So it's not only burning fat, it's burning fat at a lot more massive rate than it would be before. Obviously, if you did a very simple carbohydrate meal before your workout, you'll have a more energy during your workout at first, because you're giving yourself all of those carbs right in a way. But if you can push yourself through that little plateau of, sometimes when you start a fasted workout, you're going to be a little lightheaded, but you're going to have amazing results that way. So professional athletes, obviously, they're going to eat because they're just worried about performance in that athletic event. But if you're going for physiological benefits, that's a fasting workout's a great way to do it.
And especially kind of touching back on the growth hormone too. What's like the big thing we always hear people talk about too? I want to shed fat and gain muscle, right? And what's one of the biggest ways to do it is everybody's talking about growth hormone right now. So if you can do that naturally, and I mean the research behind how much production of growth hormone is unreal.
Well, it's mind-boggling. I mean, what does it say? This is the American College of Cardiology. In women, it increased 1,300%. Now, growth hormone is not a hormone specific to males. Both sexes need this. I mean, this is more elasticity in your skin health, anti-aging, everything. Your body's ability to regenerate, grow, repair. So growth hormone is vital. We think about that as a performance-enhancing drug. That's what's interesting. It is for a lot of males when they get at that age where when they're halting their natural body's production. But that comes with a ton of side effects. If they knew how to intermittent fast and do this kind of naturally, they would not hit that plateau that they do in their late 30s, early 40s. And so it's interesting. So 1,300% increase in women, 2,000 increase in men. And that is just unheard of. You can't do that from an injection. Absolutely not. And plus, injections are never bioidentical, because there's no such thing as a bioidentical hormone. You can't replicate what your body makes into a lab and think it's going to be bioidentical. So you can call it somewhat identical. You can call it, maybe 90% identical, but it's not identical. And your body always has an adverse reaction to that. Just showing that, if you have an adverse reaction to a bioidentical hormone, it's not bioidentical, because then your body wouldn't have an adverse reaction to it, and there wouldn't be side effects. So that's pretty much with the growth hormone thing. And that's just so cool, because not only is it for growth, for anti-aging, but you're going to increase your metabolism that way, longevity. The more growth hormone, you're going to look like your 30s when you're in your 50s. And that's what we all want. And so let's just do it. And it's easy.
Yeah, it really is. I remember when I first started it, that it just seemed so daunting at first. And we'll talk about some of the big steps on how to start that in just a little bit. But I mean, it's really not that hard if you think about it, especially when you put into the mindset of, hey, just skip breakfast, eat a little bit later. And there's different hacks and different tweaks you can do to kind of help you along with that. But one of the things that I was looking into that I found in your video, actually, that was super interesting, was that intermittent fasting increases our production of BDNF. Why don't you talk about what that does for us?
Yeah. So in general, some of those really good biochemical benefits that our hunter-gatherers got from those cycling those periods of feast and famine, those properties are your body's ability to rejuvenate. And that rejuvenation property is it activates tons of stem cells throughout the body. So your body's able to just completely repair itself. And they call that process autophagy. Auto and phagy, so autophagy. And but one of the big ones there, and because most people are really interested in, in brain function, obviously. We used to think that once you lost brain cells, they were gone permanently. Well, we now know there's a thing called neuroplasticity, where our body can actually make new neuronal connections, new brain cells. And BDNF stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's basically brain stem cells, and they're mostly located in your hippocampus, which is an area of your brain for higher learning, memory. So memory enhancement, higher learning, that's all things we want. Now, intermittent fasting can increase that brain stem cell by 50 to 400%, 50 to 400%. Now, that's a huge range. But even if you get 50% increase on the low part of the range, that's freaking huge.
I'll take it.
Like, increase my brain stem cells. And so you're actually able to increase your brain's ability to replicate and make new brain cells. Sorry, my dog's going crazy, but but I mean, it's absolutely, this is unheard of. And so you're going to have enhanced brain function, memory, concentration, all from just that intermittent fasting. And a lot of it too is it all comes down to your body's ability to use that fat as fuel, which is a lot cleaner energy. And you'd be surprised that almost all your cells in your body can function very, very well on fat, on ketones. So it's very cool.
And one of the other things too, and you could probably confirm this too, is I think as soon as I started, one of the things that got me most addicted to it, because when I started 5 days a week. I figured, okay, I'll do it during the work week, and then on the weekends, if I want to go out to breakfast with my wife or something, we'll do something like that. And one of the things that I found that I loved about it was during that fasting window, especially during the morning up until you take your first meal, was like there is so much clarity that comes with that fasting state. Like I felt like I was able to work more, I was able to think clearly, I was more creative. Like my brain was working on like hyperdrive. It was like I was seriously burning this 91 octane fuel for my brain. So I mean, I think that totally goes back to that BDNF.
Yeah, I mean, you are, and it's also too. I mean, our body isn't made to have meals every 2 to 3 hours. So when we start our day off with a heavy meal, we're kind of getting that food fatigue, that like food coma type of thing, and so a lot of our productivity gets just instantly just down regulated from eating a meal right away. So absolutely, your body's going to be responding better. Think about if we knew this in school. I remember in school, both of us were the munchers, eating because we just couldn't handle it. But I mean, think about if we knew now. I mean, then what we know now, like
way different.
It's a game changer, right? Yeah, and I mean, think about how we would do on tests. I mean, it'd just be way different, So we were already tired, but at least we would increase our physiology. But I mean, our professors didn't know this.
Oh yeah, I remember before tests they'd tell us, make sure you get, you feed yourself because you want your brain to be on high. And I would find that when I would have a big meal before a test, I'd be lethargic. Halfway through the test, I'm sitting there, hands on my, head on my hands, just trying to keep awake.
Yeah. Or if you didn't eat, your stomach would start making all these crazy noises because you've trained your body by then to eat every couple hours. So that moment you go without food, your body's going kind of like, I'm so hungry. And that's the thing with intermittent fasting, and that's where a lot of people can kind of get discouraged about, is that you do go through a period of where you're of hunger cravings, of sugar cravings. You're going to go through a little period, just like if you quit coffee. You're going to go through a couple of days of that caffeine withdrawal. But again, you kind of got to there's always going to be benefits. So it's never going to be that easy. But really, I mean, you go through, it usually takes on average about 2 weeks to kind of get over those hunger cravings in the morning, where now you wake up and you're not even hungry in the morning. And it's not until about noon is where you get hungry anyway. And so I used to kind of do it like 5 days, and then like on the weekends I'd allow myself to eat breakfast and kind of go off it. But now it's like I don't even want to, because I don't have that appetite the first thing in the morning. It takes like a special Christmas breakfast or something like very rare that or some of my favorite foods that will actually do it for me. But other than that, I'm just not hungry anymore, because your body totally adapts, and now I'm kind of eating the way I was designed to, and it's really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. Now for some people, it may seem incredibly daunting to even begin this at first. You think, all right, I'm fasting for 12, 15 hours at first. I only have 8 hours to eat. What are some of the best steps to start intermittent fasting?
Yeah, so what's cool is intermittent fasting's benefits, it really all comes down to one thing, and that's keeping your insulin levels low. That's what kind of constitutes your fasting period. The fact that we're not eating foods with any carbohydrates that increases insulin, because once insulin's increased, all those benefits go away. So what's cool is that, for someone who's like a coffee drinker like I am, I love my, black organic coffee. And one thing you can do is say that we take the approach of skipping breakfast. Well, what you can do is you can actually add, because coffee has no carbohydrates, pure black organic coffee. So I brew that fresh each morning. And what you can actually do is you can add up to a tablespoon of grass-fed butter and organic unrefined coconut oil to a blender. I use my Vitamix, add the coffee in there, blend it up. It's like creamy goodness. And those easily digestible, those medium chain fats from the butter, the butyric acid, from the coconut oil, it really helps kind of give your brain some of that clarity. So you don't kind of get that like crash that people would initially start to have. But I still do that today. I don't necessarily get a crash, but I just like that I call it bulletproof coffee. Really, where bulletproof though is actually where they use their product, the brain octane oil, where they're basically taking coconut oil, but they're only taking a certain type of medium chain fat out of the coconut oil. So they do a couple of different things. But again, coconut oil works just fine. And so it's really cool. So you can get those easily digestible fats in there to give your brain some energy when you're going through that middle part of that early part of the day. But when people know that they can, all I have to do, they say, oh my God, I can only eat for 8 hours, or I have to go 16 hours. When you explain it to them, that just means you got to skip one meal, and you don't have to restrict your calories. Just eat from lunch to dinner, and you can snack in between. It's really not that hard. And people are like, oh, okay, I think I could do that. It's just one meal. But when you say 16 hours, for them, it just seems like, okay, no way. No, game changer, not doing it. Mm-hmm. But really, it's not bad. And you can add those healthy fats in there, just no sugar. Because once you add that insulin spike to your system, all your fasting benefits go down the drain.
Yeah, I think the bulletproof coffee is like a huge game changer too. That's like the perfect thing. I crave that in the morning when I wake up now. I don't want a breakfast burrito. I don't want like eggs and bacon anymore in the morning. Like I just crave that bulletproof coffee because it's so clean. I just sip it throughout the morning, and it's like the perfect thing to keep me clear, but also functioning at that high level too. Now, when you talk about exercise, do you recommend a certain style? Like, should I go out and go on a run, or is more high intensity better?
Well, you got to have we have a variety of systems in our body for energy. We got aerobic, anaerobic, and we each have the capability of this because we should be using all of them. There's not one just single thing you should be doing all the time. So it's best to have a diverse program. So in some of my talks, I'm a big proponent of high intensity interval training. But again, that doesn't mean I'm against endurance training either. I'm just against those people who just do, only long, slow jogs, and that's all they do for the nutrition program. Because they're never getting the results they want. And in fact, it's actually taxing on the body when you just do that. Now, I personally do long distance runs. Well, my long distance runs are like 4 to 5 miles, but that's only a part of my plan. So I do endurance, I do high intensity interval training, I do just regular resistance training. So I just try to vary it up as much as possible because I want to use all those energy systems our body has. But in terms of the most bang for your buck, high intensity interval training is probably second to none. And it's basically all about intensity there. You can do the classic, they call it sprint 8, where you're sprinting for 30 seconds followed by a minute and a half rest. But it's all about that varying intensity thing that's really giving you those physiological benefits. And so that right there, if you do a sprint 8 where you're doing 8 sets of basically 30 seconds all out followed by a minute and a half recovery, comes to about a 20-minute workout. That will give you more benefits than a 3-hour long workout in the gym at less intensity. So you're really getting the most bang for your buck that way, and you're activating a ton of your fast twitch muscle fibers, which is usually untapped when we're just running long distances. So it's actually very, very beneficial in terms of, and it actually will further spike your brain-derived neurotrophic factor, your BDNF, your brain stem cells, and also your human growth hormone by even more than what intermittent fasting already does. So if you want to become like the superhuman, you combine those two, and bam, you're gonna be in good hands.
Perfect. Now, for someone who say like they're a CrossFitter or they're pretty active, high intensity athlete, is intermittent fasting possible for those who are say doing that 5-6 times a week?
I think it is. And CrossFit, because again, the high intensity interval training, it's not like you have to follow these exact guidelines. Because really, if you look deep into it, there's ways to do it where you're more successful. Like doing a sprint 8 is like the classic example, going all out for that 30 seconds. But that's why CrossFitters are so successful too, because it's a high intensity exercise. You don't really feel like working out after a CrossFit exercise. But again, like you're going all out on these sets, and then it's followed by a little bit of rest. So I mean, it's kind of, CrossFit does kind of utilize those principles. Now, if you're going in a competition, I wouldn't recommend doing the intermittent fasting before. But in terms of like building up your body and getting all those physiological benefits through the process of training with growth hormone, with activating your brain stem cells, all kinds of things, I think that intermittent fasting or fasting before the workout is a great thing. Now, with that said, if we're more of a higher functioning athlete, and so we're not necessarily trying to lose weight or anything, then I would recommend doing some branched chain amino acids before your workout. And I also add some really clean creatine as well. So that's just in straight water. Now, you don't want just pure protein powder. That actually will hinder your fast. But the branched chain amino acids will kind of give you those building blocks in there to kind of hold on to that muscle synthesis through your workout. So your body's not going to just like completely tax its systems out of there. So I would recommend doing that before and after a workout, a small amount of BCAAs, and only after your workout if you're not able to have a shake right away. If you have access to a shake within 30 minutes, you don't need those branched chain amino acids after, as long as you're going to get some good grass-fed whey protein, what I like to do personally. So for those higher functioning athletes out there, or for those who like to work out, but they want to continue their fasting after the workout and they're not able to have a post-workout meal, then I would recommend branched chain amino acids before and after. And theoretically, if you do that, you can kind of stay in your fasting state before you have your first meal.
And it's super helpful too, especially during the workouts, because especially if you're just beginning intermittent fasting, especially if you're a CrossFitter doing any high intensity, what I found is I used to be a 5-6 day a week CrossFitter, but when I started the intermittent fasting, I found I didn't actually like to do the CrossFit as much during the week, but if I needed to or I really wanted to or I just felt good, which you do on intermittent fasting, then branched chain amino acids really help you still perform to that high level. And then as soon as you're done with the workout, all right, it's time to feed. It's time to feed your body. So it's kind of that perfect little setup there. But I found even for myself, actually pulling back on the CrossFit and adding in some of those things like a long distance run throughout the week, yoga, and some of those things that help my body perform even better has been super beneficial for me as well too.
I just try to do as much variation as possible. Honestly, the sprints are what I hate the most. I mean, because it's the hardest. Yeah. And the thing is, the hardest things sometimes are, have the most benefits that come with it. So even though it takes the shortest amount of time, it's just something I dread. I mean, it's kind of a slow walk down the ocean on the boardwalk. I mean, that's like a breeze for me. I love doing that. But in terms of benefits you get, I mean, there's nothing that comes close to the high intensity interval training. So
yeah, for sure. Now tell us a little bit about your book. You just recently came out with a book. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So basically what we talked about, I went through and, it's actually, here's a copy right here. It's the scientific approach to intermittent fasting. Now, when you're looking at it, I mean, I don't even know how much, but the reference is there's 102 peer-reviewed journal articles I cite in this. And it's crazy how much research is actually into intermittent fasting, but sometimes they call it periodic fasting. Sometimes they call it something different, and people just aren't aware of it, and it's all there. And so what I did is I just it's kind of like a review of the literature, but also it goes deep down into the different fasting plans, how to implement it, what's the best nutrition to eat during the eating times, basically to get the best bang for your buck. So pretty much like the dummy's guide to every single thing to have all your questions answered about it, the book is the go-to. Now, the YouTube channel where I have my YouTube talks and stuff, that will give you a general idea to get started right away. So you don't need to read the book to get started, but for those of us that like to know the why for every step, like I do, reading the book would be a very good thing. And it's kind of like a dumbed down version. You're really going to learn how the body operates, the physiological processes the body does when it eats, when it's fasting. And I think when people have an understanding of what this is actually doing, they have their likelihood of actually succeeding through this program is a lot higher because they know what the benefits they're getting and they know exactly why they're happening.
Yeah, for sure. And now for you, last question I have for you. What does health is wealth mean to you?
Well, I started off my book with a quote, and I mean, I usually I'm not a big quote person, but this one really stuck with me, and it goes like this: the people who say they don't have time to take care of themselves will soon discover they're spending all their time being sick. Now, that's by Patricia Alexander. But again, people who say, they go through life saying, oh, their health is always on the back burner. Those people that sign up for care but aren't making their appointments, because there's always something else. But then, boom, they get sick, and now their whole life is centered on this sick care, this never-ending processes. And you ask any of those people that are sick, they are just wishing they could go back in time and make those dang appointments, do those necessary steps to get better, because nothing comes close, to having, nothing comes close to your health as just like a commodity. I mean, health is just the best thing you can have. You ask anyone, when you have a kid, when you have anything, what's your only wish? Is that your son is healthy, your daughter is healthy. It's all you care about. Health is the biggest thing, and life is about relationships. And if you're not healthy, you can't enjoy those relationships. You can't do anything. And not only that, you're functioning properly when you're healthy. If you're into making money, if you're into, athletic performance, well, if you're not healthy, you're not going to be able to have any of that, because when you're healthy and you're functioning optimally, you're having that good brain function, is when you're really going to be able to meet all the goals in your life. And so health is wealth. I mean, it really is true. And that's why me and my wife, we practice this every day, but I mean, amongst other things. So, I mean, health is usually on the forefront of everything we do.
Yeah, it has to be. Now, where can people find more about you? Where can they find more information about you and also your book as well, too?
Yeah. So, I do, bi-monthly health talks. We do these lectures, and I put them on my YouTube channel. So I have a very active YouTube channel. You can go to youtube.com/DrMichaelVan DC, and you can subscribe to that, and you're going to get all these lectures, and it's always a hot topic, whether it's cholesterol, sleep, brain function, intermittent fasting, nutrition. You're going to learn all of that stuff, and it's free. And so it's a great source there. The book is available on Amazon, Amazon.com. Just type in the scientific approach to intermittent fasting, or just simply type in my name, Dr. Michael Vandershelden, and the book will come up, and you can get that book there. But again, I would just encourage you to just subscribe to that channel, and all that information is free. And my only hope is that if you do like it, you share the word with people, because that literally, this info is going to change lives, and it does change lives.
Absolutely. Totally does. Wait, thank you so much for being on the show, and I'll make sure to have all those links in the show notes as well, too. And Dr. Mike, great to see you again, brother, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Dr. Brady, you're the man, man. Thank you so much.